Hello everyone, Andy here, and here's what you can look forward to in today's episode.
In today's episode, I was joined by Aaron Fletcher as we review Week 5 of the 2025 NFL season. I go on an angry rant after the Dolphins collapse against the Carolina Panthers.
What the f*** was that?
And Fletch discusses his Lions as they move to 4-1 after a win against the Cincinnati Bengals.
I'm not going to complain. They've put up 37 and 38 points respectively and 38 in respective weeks.
Hope you all enjoy.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Across the Pod NFL podcast. I am, as ever, your host today, Andy Davis, as we are here to review Week 5 of the 2025 NFL season. With me, I've got a returning guest, a well-known member of this podcast by now, a well-seasoned vet on this podcast today. It is part of the Asleep at Work networks. It is Aaron Fletcher. Oh, Fletch, how are you? How are things?
I'm good, thank you, my friend. I'm really, really glad to be back on. You know, I can't go more than a few months without being on this podcast because it hurts me deep inside of my soul. So I'm very, very glad to be back on. How are you after a really exciting weekend in London?
Yeah, really good weekend. Up to his usual good standards in terms of the stuff we were able to do. Being able to go to the Vikings practice on Friday, being able to watch the team practice, and for the Vikings, they gave us a lot longer than other teams do or have done in the past. We had about half an hour, 45 minutes, maybe half an hour to watch them practice. And normally you get, the normal process is you get 15 minutes, then you get told, right, no phones are allowed now, and we all go back to the media bit. Whereas this time we were told no phones, but we were allowed to stay and watch, but not record, and then record again. So fair play to the Vikings. They gave a lot of more time. Managed to. I mentioned last week that me and friend of the show, Freddie Hall from the Franchise Tag podcast, me and him ended up in the same Uber as two Steelers players, and then got in the same train as them, and went to the pub with them. A similar situation, not a pub or Uber, but I was getting a train from where the practice was, or maybe it's about a 5-10 minute Uber from where it is to the train station. And thankfully, on the way back, I got a lift from a friend I made in the media section that day. It was a guy called Reese. He is one of the cameramen at NFL London games. So he dropped me off at the train station where it is, being the nearest one to the practice field. And then, lo and behold, I'm sitting on the platform waiting for this train to go back towards the main part of London where my Airbnb was. And who was sat next to me on the train waiting for the train to come? Adam Thielen, Will Rijkaard, and I didn't recognise the third player. That was insane. And then she got on the same train as me, and I did shake Thielen's hand and go, "Oh, I love your story, Adam." And then I carried on walking then, and used a trip for a wheel on the train to make an excuse to actually go past him on the train to speak to him. But that was cool. Went to the Vikings event on Saturday. Got to interview Chris Carter. You'd probably seen it on, for those who watch my TikTok or the podcast socials, you'd have seen my very brief chat with Chris Carter. And then Sunday was good. The game, we'll get onto the game in a bit, but the game was good. It did sort of, well, let's go on to it now. The game itself was won by the Vikings. I thought for a lot of the game, it was actually pretty poor. Particularly on offense, I thought both defenses were good. But then towards the end, the game just sort of strung to life. And, the last minute or 20 seconds left on the clock when Allison received the ball to win the Vikings that game. And, that keeps them unbeaten on UK soil. But that means obviously they lost their first game internationally in Dublin. But they got the win there. And the Browns, I believe, are 0-2 now in London games, both of them against the Vikings, coincidentally. So, yeah, I thought the game was good. I thought, Justin Jefferson made some amazing catches, and a lot of them were very, thankfully, on the halfway line was where the press box was. So that was good to see. And obviously it was good to see a friend from school, Matt Royston, if you are listening. Shout out to Matt Royston. His first ever game. He's a Browns fan as well. He's only gone to the NFL the past 6 years, and he's been a Browns fan ever since then. And for him to go to his first game, eventually got into a seat. Got to see his first ever game, and I'm happy for him and his brother Sam that he got to watch it and almost see his team win. but obviously it's yourself. You watched it from home, Fletch.
Yes, I did.
What was your take on the game? Because it was, like I said before, it was a game where it was for a lot of time. You think, oh, this is an absolute stinker. Both Dylan Gabriel had some good moments, but it's been a bit questionable. And then, Carson Wentz had some bad throws and bad moments, but in the end, turned out to be a great affair.
Yeah, I'll start by mentioning Dylan Gabriel, like you just said there. I mean, look, first ever NFL start, and you've travelled across the world, and you're making your first NFL start for someone in that position. I feel like he did really, really, really well. Some of the throws that he made were fantastic. The way he conducted himself in the pocket seemed really, really good. Obviously, there were mistakes in there. There were things that weren't perfect, but again, that's to be expected from someone starting the first ever game in the NFL, coming up against a completely new problems. The problems in the NFL with defenses are a lot different to the ones in college football and the ones he'd face at a powerhouse recently, like Oregon. So, yeah, it was like I say, it was a slow starter. It was a slow burner. I personally like those kind of games. Weirdly enough, a big fan of those defensive battles. You've got the number one defense in the league that the Browns have going up against look, no matter who's at quarterback, Kevin O'Connell's a quarterback whisperer. He can make just about anyone work in that offense when you've got the likes of Justin Jefferson in there. I really enjoyed the defensive battle, particularly early on. Really upset about the Quinshon Judkins touchdown getting pulled back because there you have an explosive play. The game comes to life a bit offensively. Unfortunately, that doesn't. That gets overturned. It comes back, and then it's another drudging rest of the half and even good chunk of the third quarter. But yeah, I mean, the only real things I think I kind of came out of it thinking were one, that Browns defense really is the number one defense for a reason. And I saw that last week when they played the Lions. Justin Jefferson, my days, that man, there is nothing that man cannot do. It's like he's playing a different sport at times. And I can only imagine just how good it is to get to watch greatness like that in person. Hopefully, at some point we'll get to see it. And look, shout out to Cam Akers, 100% pass completion rate, averaging 32 yards a pass and a touchdown every pass he throws with 158.3 passer rating. When Carson Wentz was looking like he might not come back for the second half, to those of us at home at least, we all thought that was going to happen. I said, look, throw Cam Akers in. So far, he's had a brilliant game as a passer.
Yeah, I mean, for those of you who've been watching my content, you'd have seen a lot of stuff coming up. That is actually due to come out this week. I actually managed to get that touchdown on film. So yeah, that was really cool to see because I feel like when you go to an event or even watching on TV, but when you go to events for all the fans out in attendance, be able to see that kind of play. I remember 2019 watching in the stands, Rams Bengals where they made the flea flicker play to Cooper Kupp. That was, for me, that was one of the best plays I've seen ever in London. That was an amazing play. I wouldn't say it was like a 50-yard touchdown or something like that, but I think for fans who are going to their first game, or even fans who are who go into the game where maybe they haven't got knowledge of the sport, they're trying to get into it. Those kind of plays, those kind of moments, draw you in. I mean, I would say the Philly special turned me from a casual fan to a diehard fan. I think the plays of Julio Jones helped me learn the game more and love the game more. And watching Drew Brees take on Philip Rivers in London was again that got me into the NFL. So these kind of moments can we look back on in the future years by young fans or fans who just got into the sport, and they can look at that play from a running back throwing a pass like a quarterback. And we saw it again. We'll go on to later on, but we saw one of your players do it as well, throw for a touchdown this weekend. So yeah, I think those kind of plays do make it all the more special for the fans. Now, I want to actually mention one more thing before we go on to our next game. Is a little bit about either very interesting half an hour or so on Sunday because two things happened. Firstly, I was doing fan interviews. People kept walking through the camera, which I was getting really, really annoyed about. But yeah, I remember I was interviewing a fan. Shout out to Christian, if you are listening. He's a Cowboys fan from Denmark. So I was interviewing him, asking him questions that again will be out on video at some point in the next week or two. Asked him questions. Of course, had a mic to give him. And the idiot I am, what did I do? Forget to get the mic back off him. So he's walking off with a Rode mic on his neck, and I couldn't find him. I couldn't find him at all. I looked all around the stadium. I think we didn't know which direction he walked in, so that didn't help. So we had no idea where to go. We looked around both angles, couldn't find it. I thought, I was thinking, okay, I've lost this camera. Thankfully, I can make it work with one of the two mics still. Has to be some adjustments on CapCut. So I'm sitting there in the fourth quarter. I do a tweet with a screenshot of the interview, just asking if you know who this guy is, sending my details, asking how to get in contact with him. So I put this tweet out, and I'm sat next to Jay Lawrence, who is a friend of the show, who sat next to me during the game. And I'm sitting there fourth quarter, and I see the guy. I'm seeing the guy in front of me. He is there. He was distinctly wore Cowboys jersey, had a big, bushy white beard, so he's very easy to find. Thankfully, he wasn't wearing a Vikings jersey because there was so many Vikings jersey there. And then literally, I see him. So I walk from the press box all around to where the fans are, to the concourse, and I find him and he gives me the mic. So what turned out to be almost £100 payment coming out of my Amazon account next payday to getting it back. So shout out to Christian, because you could have easily, been other end of the stadium. You could have easily taken it and tried to sell it and made money out of it. But no, fair play to him. So that was a brief panic I had, which thankfully, ended up going okay in the end.
Yeah, the very, very. I can imagine just how much you were sweating a little bit throughout the whole game. Yeah, big up Christian. Well done, doing the good thing, and yeah, how fortunate that you were able to see him then. And also, shout out Jay Lawrence as well. Another one of the best content creators in the game over this side. So I got to meet him last year at the Dublin game for very briefly at the airport before we were leaving.
I was with you.
Yeah,
for that
yeah, because you turned up at the airport with him, so I finally got to meet him in person as well for granted a minute. But yeah, very, very, very fortunate, I think. Stomach's out of butterflies for you. Whew.
Yeah, I mean, Jay, I have great fans sat next to him. I mean, the thing is that we never get told where we're sat. We get given a seat number, but you can't choose where you sit. You get told, well, you got this ticket number. Obviously, if there's a group of you that work for the same podcast or same channel, then obviously you are then. But to the companies, you get given a random seat. I remember last year I was sat next to a Bills defensive scout when I was watching Jets against Vikings. That was cool. Other times it's just regular journalists. And me and Jay had a great laugh during that game. And I even got a little bit of insight into his life as a TikTok celebrity, where people were asking for photos. That was quite funny to watch, quite surreal. But no, really good to experience it with Jay. Of course, Jay's been on this podcast many times. People will know his voice very well, even not from this podcast. But yeah, good London experience, and I appreciate some fans maybe didn't get that, the ones that had the issue with tickets. But thankfully they seem to have amended that, and hopefully there will be no issues come next week. Now, moving on to the rest of the slate. Now, we did have a Thursday night game, which again was a thriller. The Niners did beat the Rams by 26 points to 23. Brief mention on this. I'll get your thoughts on it, Fletch, as well. I mean, the performance of Mac Jones. I mean, we see quarterbacks we've had quarterbacks with maybe resurgence. Sam Darnold had it last year, and then going into this year as well, we've had Daniel Jones have a bit of resurgence with the Colts.
Yeah,
they're only 4-1. He's playing some good stuff, and then Mac Jones had a brilliant performance. And again, that we had Keg on the preview for this week. We both had the Rams winning. I said that even with no injuries, I thought the Rams would still beat the Niners. And one thing I did forget, that Shanahan has an amazing record against McVay in the regular season. That's one thing I completely forgot, and I'm sure Keg forgot as well, because despite, McVay did beat him in the playoffs when it mattered, Shanahan has had an amazing record against him, in what is a division rivalry. Mac Jones, for me, was brilliant. And in this game, he had 342 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, pretty good completion percentage. And, he talked about it after the game. He's saying that he's the backup. He's very honest about it. He's very upfront, saying, when Brock Purdy's back, he's a starter. But do you make the change? Because Brock Purdy will know full well from his experience getting into the first team, getting into the starting role. Jimmy Garoppolo, seasoned vet there. But I think if Mac Jones plays like this for the next 3 weeks and he keeps playing and Brock Purdy doesn't play, I think even more questions are raised. There's already been questions asked now, and I'm sure Paul Hope, who I'd love to get on in the next few weeks, I'm sure he's got some opinions on this. And many of the Niners fans, like Ollie Hope as well, who've been on this podcast, I'd be interested in their opinion because Mac Jones has looked the quarterback that we all thought we were getting out of after that first year with the Patriots. I mean, almost went to the Niners. Prior to the draft, there was that whole smoke about is he going to go third overall. You had Shanahan and John Lynch watching him on his pro day and stuff like that. So we're kind of getting a glimpse into what might happen if he'd been drafted that year instead of it was a Trey Lance that same year. It was a really good performance. Now, I do think that hold your horses just for now because it has only been a few weeks. But I do think if he keeps playing like this, I think it's going to give him, albeit a nice problem to have, a real headache for Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, I think it's one of those questions, isn't it, where do you go with the hot hand? It's always like, do you go with the hot hand? Do you break? Do you fix what isn't broken? All that kind of stuff. The Shanahan system, we've said it. I think most people have said it now for quite a while. Obviously, not just anyone can walk in and be successful and all that sort of stuff, but it's generally built to be almost anyone can walk in and see some relative success within that system because Kyle Shanahan is a genius offensively. And that's something that, nobody can really deny how much of a genius Kyle Shanahan is. Obviously, Sean McVay is also an offensive genius, but that offense is built that most quarterbacks can walk in, seek relative success. The question really, I say, becomes: do you fix what isn't broken, or does Brock Purdy's contract come into play? I think has to be part of the question. They're paying him good money now, very good money, and do they want to be paying good money for him to sit on the bench? I don't know. Personally, I'd say, look, at the end of the day, Mac Jones is playing really well. He's getting it going with the offense. Don't take him out until things maybe start going wrong, and you put Brock back in. But it's a business decision as well at the end of the day, which is at times less of a nice headache. But for the most part, it's a nice headache to have. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I want to cast everyone's minds back to the 2001 season when the New England Patriots had a quarterback named Drew Bledsoe, who was the starting quarterback, who was a renowned name in the league on a big contract back then. And Tom Brady was a nobody at this point. He was one of the backups, or might even been third choice at one point. But he was, the backup to Drew Bledsoe. What happens? They play the Jets. Bledsoe goes down, Brady comes in. Everyone knows this story. But, of course, Bledsoe was on a big contract. He was a renowned star. And then, Belichick sticks with Brady and he wins the Super Bowl. Now, I'm not saying Mac Jones is Tom Brady.
Yeah.
But the last 3 times they started 3-1, and then they're now 4-1 as well. They've made Super Bowls, with the one couple of years ago, the 2020 season, and then I believe it was the 2012 season as well. So, the signs are there that they could. I don't think they will, but the Kyle Shanahan team is well coached with George Kittle coming back and all the other offensive weapons, Ricky Pearsall. You never know. So I think I'm of the opinion that if it's going well, don't upset the apple cart. Kind of my issue with Liverpool at the moment, but I do feel like for me, if Mac Jones keeps playing well, I don't think you can drop him. I think Brock Purdy, if he's a team player, he'll be okay with it. So I think for me, if I'm Kyle Shanahan, I think obviously the moment Mac Jones starts playing badly, then obviously bring Brock back in, then no questions about it. But I think if Mac Jones has performances like this in 8 of the next 9 weeks, I think personally I don't think there's any way you can drop him personally.
Yeah, I'd be exactly the same. I would 100% stick with the hot hand. I want to stick with what's working, just because. Well, it's working at the end of the day. And I know I keep repeating the phrase, but don't fix what isn't broken. And it isn't broken right now, so it doesn't need to be fixed. So
I agree totally. Let's move on to the rest of the to the Sunday slate. Of course, we mentioned Vikings Browns. You had the Ravens going to 1-4. They lost by 44 points to 10 in their heaviest ever home loss in team history, a result that got John Harbaugh booed. The Colts kept the ball rolling. They beat the Raiders by 40 points to 6. The Saints got their first win of the season as they beat the Giants by 28 points to 14. The Jets moved 0-5 as they lost to the Cowboys by 37 points to 22. And the Eagles lost their unbeaten start. They lost by 21 points to 17 to the Denver Broncos, which meant that the Bills were the last team undefeated. But then later on that day, on Sunday Night Football, they lost themselves in a shock loss to the New England Patriots. Elsewhere on Sunday, we had the Commanders beating the Chargers by 27 points to 10. And sadly, the Dolphins losing to the Panthers 27 to 24, despite being 17-0 up in the first half. Apologies, I'm gonna swear here. I don't really swear on this podcast. What the was that? What the actual hell was that? 17-0 up, 0 up to, we weren't playing an Eagles, a Lions, a Bills. We were playing one of the worst teams in the league. They were, 1-3 before this game starts? Some awful performances, and we, 17-0 up. Darren Waller having a throwback game, really good performance from him. Jalen Waddle really taking on the number one handle as as with Tyreek Hill injured. And you're thinking, okay, they scored a touchdown, fair enough. Then what the hell did I watch? Seriously, the offense actually I have not a lot of problems with, apart from maybe getting it done late on in the fourth quarter. But then Tua throws that great throw to Jalen Waddle with 4 minutes left. And you think, okay, that could win the game. By the way, amazing commentary in that game. But the defense just kept allowing Rico Dowdle in the yards and then the penalties. For me, I can handle losing to the Bills. I can handle losing to the Bills because we played well, and all that kind of stuff attached. They're one of the best teams in the league. I think they're winning the AFC this year. And then you think about, the Colts loss. Okay, teams have these defeats, especially in week one. I'm okay with that. You can have bad performance here and now and again, and you can write it off as a one-off. And the Patriots, okay, that was a disappointing defeat, but you're happy with the performance. Yeah. But when you're going into a game as not the clear favourites, but the favourites to win the game, you're playing against a bad team, even on the road, and to lose like that, I think, you're thinking when you're 17, they're like, okay, maybe we can go 2-3. We got the Browns coming up. We got we got teams that we can beat here. The Chargers, they lost back-to-back games now. They're missing a lineman. You think, okay, we could be on to maybe a surprise season, or could at least be on to at least being 8 and 9, or being at least in that chat to make the playoffs come week 17, week 16, week 18. But that loss for me was that's it. That's a season ender. You can't come back from that. No. For me, I think McDaniel. I think I really wanted to do well. I really wanted to succeed. I do like him, but I don't know whether you blame him or whether you blame the DC. But either way, to not get it done again in the big moment, it's really, really frustrating.
No, I fully understand that. Again, I've been in that position for many a year before the last couple of years, where everything just seems frustrating, and you keep snatching. Let's try that again in English. You keep snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, and all those kinds of things. I can only speak as an insider who has to be perfectly honest with you here, Randy, the vast majority of Dolphins football I've watched this year has been via Red Zone when it has come through. Obviously have had can you call it fortune to watch a good chunk of the Jets game and a good chunk of the Bills game, because they were primetime games. And it just feels, I don't know, do you feel a bit like maybe he's lost the locker room? Maybe McDaniel's head's just not in it? And I said on Hurdle the Line a couple of weeks ago it might have been after the Patriots lost, but it also might have been after the Bills lost, when he did the press conference and he looked, energy was out of his face. I know when you lose, you feel down. These people they're ultimate competitors from the top to the bottom. Losing is the worst thing on the planet, and you lose a game like that. But I feel worried about him at times, because he spoke about his previous issues with mental health, and the struggles that he's faced with his mental health, and he's under so much pressure and so many people right now are against him, maybe he's mentally checking out a little bit.
I mean, yeah, you think about his press conferences, and he does seem to be more and more sort of stumbling over his words, or maybe just not making sense. And you mentioned about losing the locker room. I don't think he ever had the locker room personally. I've said it before, but I think he sometimes tries to be people's friends too much. I don't get the sense there's much discipline from him, and the fact that you're allowing Tyreek Hill to miss meetings allegedly, that's what they were saying happened last year. I mean, I don't think anyone ever really. I kind of, for me personally, looking on, it feels like the players are almost maybe not taking advantage of him, but maybe just they know they can get away with stuff. I mean, I think we mentioned about John Harbaugh getting booed. People talk about Mike Tomlin. Could he leave if they go 9-8 and miss the playoffs? Generally, if them two get fired or they leave the franchise net, open to coaching again, get Harbaugh or Tomlin. We need a dictator. We need someone who's going to tell them, stop doing this shit. Basically, you can't keep allowing these players just to walk over you. And it's why we're soft in big games, because we've got no discipline. Brian Flores days, tough coach. Some would say too tough on players. But you watch games we had with him in the 2020 season, even the 2019 season, when we were awful at the start and then we turned it around, won 5 of the last 6 games or something like that. The players looked like they wanted to play for the coach. They had fight in them. I think like that Patriots game, which meant the Patriots were no longer having a playoff bye, which ended up being, Tom Brady's penultimate game in the NFL for the Patriots. You think about the game against the Chiefs the following year, where we kept up the pace with Mahomes, at Hard Rock. Gesicki scored 2 touchdowns. You think about many performances under Flores where we had that fight. We wanted to win. We wanted to play for the coach. But I feel like even though Daniel's given me the best 2 seasons I've had as a Dolphins fan. I mean, 2 playoff years. Some really good games. The Ravens game, the comeback against them. You think about the Cowboys game on the very early hours of Christmas Day, which got us into the playoffs. But Daniel's given me some great moments, But I just feel like he hasn't got that leadership. I think if you put him as an OC somewhere, I think he'll do a great job. But I think as a head coach, you need that leadership. You need that sort of authoritativeness to your personality, which Harbaugh does have and Tomlin has. Now, that's what you need. And Mike Vrabel would have been the perfect candidate. He would have been the perfect guy, I think, for our team. But obviously, Patriots come calling. And obviously, as an ex-player, you can't really deny him that opportunity to go there. So, I think fair play to the Panthers. They stuck at it and they kept going when they could have even had their heads down at one point in this game. Bryce Young made some terrible throws. One that Bradley Chubb recovered from. But, for me, it's disappointing. No, I wasn't expecting us to make the playoffs or win the Super Bowls, but I think that kind of performance, I think just puts a nail in the coffin. And I think that, whether it is Chris Greer and McDaniel or just McDaniel, I think something needs to change personally. So, personally, that for me is a shame. But, sadly for me, it's part of my life being a Dolphins fan. It just needs one person to change the culture, and maybe then things will change for the better. Moving on to the rest of the Sunday slate, we want to touch on your team, Fletch, very quickly as well. Lions go 4-1 with a 37-24 win over the Cincinnati Bengals, who now move to 2-3. They have in the last 2 hours of recording traded for Joe Flacco, who of course lost his job as the start to Dylan Gabriel at the Browns. Quick thought on the Lions, just maybe not the game, just their season overall, because after week 1, I think a lot of people were fearing the worst. You lost 2 coordinators. You lose to the Packers in pretty bad fashion. But since then, I think you've looked like you did last season.
Yeah, I mean, sorry. The game was such a frustrating one because, again, I think similar to the way the Browns game worked, at times it feels like the score flatters the Lions a little bit, especially offensively. Obviously, it's not I'm not going to complain with putting up 37 and 38 points respectively on 38 in respective weeks, but that Bengals defense really gave the Lions some troubles. We had Giovanni Manu making his first NFL start, going up against on an island Trey Hendrickson. Poor Jared Goff, he nearly walked out of that the building in a body bag. It was not pretty on quite a few of those snaps. Yeah, they gave us hell most of the game. Luckily, we were able to take advantage of a lot of their poor offense, get some really good turnovers in the game, 3 interceptions, 2 fumbles recovered. It's giving us some excellent field position, of which for the majority we were able to make them. Oh no, sorry, just the 3 interceptions that we were able to make the most out of the turnovers and give us good field position. Jake Browning just didn't. I called at least 10 passes of Jake Browning's throughout the game. I knew exactly who he was going to, when he was going to them on multiple, because he stared down his first read and he didn't come out of his first read. Defense really made the game for us. Offense had a lot of troubles. Shout out to David Montgomery, though. His first game back in Cincinnati since he was in high school, because he went to Iowa State to college. The last time he played in Cincinnati in high school, he was a quarterback / running back. So to come back to Cincinnati, throw a touchdown and run a touchdown in was very special. His sister and family were in the building, and if you watch the game or you watch some of the highlights, they kept mentioning that Valentine's Day last year, his sister had a car accident, paralyzed from the neck down, and hasn't been able to come and watch him play for nearly a season and a half. So it was the first time his sister was able to go and watch him play in that amount of time. So it was a very special occasion for him being back home. And yeah, like I say, just overall, a frustrating game. The scoreline very, very much flatters what a defensive game this was. And obviously with Jamar Chase getting those 2 late touchdowns and T. Higgins getting a late touchdown in garbage time, very frustrating to kind of let that just happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can make an argument that sometimes, these plays happen when maybe you're comfortable in the game and you take your foot off the gas. I mean, we saw that with the Super Bowl last year with the Eagles-Chiefs. That game, that scoreline doesn't do it justice. I think that scoreline should have been way more of a gap between the 2 scorelines. I think it's just because the Eagles knew they'd probably won the game. They were taking their foot off the gas a little bit. I think this is, for me, nothing more than that for me personally.
Yeah.
I mean, Lions, I've said it, the last 2 weeks or so, I think the Lions are making the Super Bowl. I do think we're getting a new winner, whether it's Lions or Bills. I think that, to me, is where, I think that is what it's going to be. And I think the Lions have been very impressive. I think that, it must be, great time. I'm looking at the next game, of course, looking on to week, on my phone is frozen here. Next game is against the Chiefs.
Yeah.
So that's a hell of a game. I mean, Chiefs, we'll mention that they did lose to the Jaguars on Monday Night Football. Lawrence had an amazing touchdown to win the game. One of the most craziest 1-yard touchdown passes you'll ever see. Rushes you'll ever see. Chiefs next. I mean, big game. And if you can beat them, go 5-1. Week 7, going on to that game. You've got the Buccaneers. There's some big games coming up for the Lions. I think if you can come out of those games and you go 6-1, or even 5-2, but 6-1, I think there's a big statement to be made here. I think the Buccaneers are a real dark horse for me, and I think that they're going to be a team that people should look out for more. But I think there's 2 big tests coming up for the Lions, I think, even with the Chiefs' faults this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is where success can become a detriment, is you get schedules like this when you win the division and you've got to go up against really good teams. We get the AFC North, which was meant to be a really tough division to play. So far, we have comfortably beat 3 of the teams in the division. The other team that we've still got to play doesn't look great. But like I said, this is it. This is what happens when you are a successful team that wins lots of games. You have to go up against difficult opponents. Even after the bye week, you got the Vikings, you got Jaden Daniels Commanders. That's a revenge game. They kicked our backsides last year in the playoffs. Then you've got the Eagles. Then you've got, I'm not too bothered about the Giants, but it's a tough run in no matter what way you look at it. We've got to win these games. The Chiefs look out of the 2, the Chiefs look the most vulnerable, but the Bucs have shown that they are vulnerable, and we seem to have like a little rivalry against them now because we play them every year. So I'm really, really looking forward to that one. It's always a really good game. We always struggle against Baker, and they'll probably. I'm pretty sure they might have Mike Evans or Chris Godwin back, or at least a couple of those weapons. Which don't want to see that. I'm scared to see those guys lining up against your corners. So yeah, they're tough running, but that was to be expected. That's going to happen. We're number one in the division twice in a row. These schedules happen. And yeah, it's about managing those games. We've come through and looked comfortable, manage the injuries, get through the games, I think.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing. Just if you can get to the playoffs and avoid the injuries that you had last year, I think that's almost, you would take 2 or 3 less wins in the season and still have the number one seed or have the 2 seed if it means having everyone fit. I think in the end that did cost you in that Commanders game. Before we end the podcast, we're going to go through a game each that caught our eye over the weekend. And Fletch, you wanted to go over the Titans 22-21 win over the Cardinals.
Yeah, so I wanted to go through it purely because I've dubbed it the Comedy Central Bowl. It was so this weekend we saw the stat I gave yesterday on Hurdle the Line was 5 comebacks of 10 plus points in the weekend, 3 comebacks of 14 plus points, and they were just for wins. You look at the Thursday night game with the Rams and the Niners. The Rams came back from a 14-point deficit, lost in overtime. And last night we had another one where the Jags came back from a 14-point deficit and won the game. So that's 6 comebacks of 10 plus points, 4 comebacks of 14 plus points in a weekend. This was arguably my favorite because when you watch it, if you watch the game and turn off the commentary and play the Benny Hill theme tune, adds a completely new dimension to the game. How the Cardinals managed to let slip an 18-point lead by just shooting themselves in the foot constantly from the third quarter onwards. Just a couple of things I did want to put out on that game was the Titans had a 16-point fourth quarter. They had no business having a 16-point fourth quarter. They were 15 points down. DeMarcado, and I'm sure you will also have thoughts on this, and I'd love to hear what you think of players who do this, goes on a 72-yard run, except it wasn't a 72-yard run. It was a 71-yard run because he let go of the ball before he went into the end zone. Goes out the back for a touchback. Titans get the ball back. That would have been off the idea that they would have scored the PAT afterwards, a 22-point game with 12 minutes to go. That's it. The game's done. 22-point game with 12 minutes to go. The Titans are finished. You give them momentum. This is about 6 minutes after your center pummels your quarterback in the face with a football. He has to go out and get checked for a concussion. You then waste a 22-point lead. They then go down and get 6 points because they missed the PAT. So that was a 13-point swing in the game when you really consider it, in which then you get the touchdown that was an interception, then it was a fumble, then it was a recovery in the end zone. Just a comedy of errors took place throughout that fourth quarter that were, I feel like, could only really happen to the Cardinals. I don't know why. I feel like even with the Dolphins, as bad as it's been for the Dolphins or even the Jets, if like only the Cardinals could give it away in a comedy of errors like that, was just and it was unacceptable. It was entirely unacceptable. The Cardinals lose 3 games in a row to a walk-off field goal. Cam Ward looked excellent all game. I don't care. He's still a rookie, but the things he does with the football are fantastic. Calvin Ridley turns up in the fourth quarter. Okonkwo turns up in the fourth quarter. Ayamano turns up in the fourth quarter. And the one thing I've said about Cam Ward all season is just get him some talent. Let the talent around him needs to step up, but you also need to put some talent around him because you're wasting his rookie year. They turn up in the fourth quarter and they get some momentum, and that's what they can put up when you let Cam Ward have talent. But yeah, that was the game that stuck out for me. mainly for just a plethora of comedy errors that took place by the Cardinals.
I don't think I've ever seen a loss like this. And I want to shout out friend of the show, Ollie Kent, who is a Cardinal fan, of course, came on our Cardinal season preview alongside Sam Morgan. He shared a tweet from, I don't know whether it was a fan or beat writer. He said he's been a fan since the 70s. That's the worst loss he's ever experienced, because everything he said is exactly true. That game shouldn't have been even close to being a contest. I mean, I was, as a thing will be across these international games, I'm watching games via 6-minute highlight packages on the zone because I haven't got time because I get back to Cardiff after the game. So, I'm having to watch it. I'm trying to get some sleep on the bus because last year proved a nightmare getting back that late every time and not sleeping. So, having to watch it all the games apart from Sunday Night Football in these 6-minute highlights. I remember watching thinking, this might be the worst team I've ever seen, the Titans. At one point, I was thinking, he hasn't got any help at all. The defense has been set fine, but I was thinking the Titans team is really bad, and they could generally win just 2 or 3 games. And then you mentioned the DiMarcano mistake. There's so many more things. I mean, it was. It felt. I mean, it makes talk about this game and what the Cardinals did wrong makes my whole rant about the Dolphins feel obsolete, feel moot. Makes you feel a lot better about it because that for me is just, I always look back at that Titans game we had in 2023 where we let a 14-point lead slip. That for me will always be the game that haunts me the most. I'd rather lose a game by 40 points, 50 points than lose a game by 5 or less, or lose a game like the Cardinals had. So yeah, terrible from them. Good for the Cam Ward to get his first win. Although I don't think it was the most conventional first win. I don't think, 9 times out of 10, he wouldn't have won that game. But fair play, I've always thought he's been the one shining light in their terrible season so far. So yeah, no, awful from the Cardinals, and I don't know where they go from here, really. I don't know where Kyler Murray goes from here, to be honest with you. Made some good plays, and made a good throw to Harrison, made a good rushing play, but I think there's definitely going to be even more questions raised about him, I think, going into the rest of the year and the off-season. But then finally, the game I wanted to focus on were the Buccaneers against Seahawks. I mean, this was a hell of an advertisement for the NFL, just back and forth between 2 great offenses. The whole second half, the score was never more than a 7-point game. It was, for a while, Buccaneers had the lead, and back and forth throughout the game. The Buccaneers ended up winning by 30-25. But I think from a quarterback perspective, which is where I feel my expertise is most in, I feel like watching them two for me was just amazing for both quarterbacks, and just for me, it felt like a real back and forth shootout moment. It was brilliant to watch. I questioned both defenses at times in this game because they allowed a lot of points, but from rushing wise, it was pretty poor. I mean, Rashad White had 2 touchdowns. Granted, they had 41 yards rushing. Charbonnet had 36 yards rushing with 1 touchdown. So it wasn't a great performance rushing-wise from either team. But, Egbuka, 153 yards. Smith and Jigba, 132 yards. And then Baker Mayfield, 379 yards. Only 4 incomplete passes, 2 touchdowns, a 2-point conversion. Sam Darnold had only 5 or 6 incomplete passes, 4 touchdowns, had a pick, which ended up winning the game for the Buccaneers. But I think both these teams the fan bases should be very happy about how the performance was from their quarterbacks, because Baker Mayfield has been amazing the last 3 years. Sam Darnold had questions going into the year. Is he a one-year wonder? Is it just a Viking system? But from what I've seen this season, what I saw from this game, for me personally, Darnold's going to be fine. Seahawks going to be fine. Smith and Jigba seems to be just really handling that number 1 role since Metcalf left really well. And Baker Mayfield is an MVP candidate for a reason. And I think this game for me was brilliant to watch. One I could watch again and again. You mentioned about you love defensive shootouts, Fletch. I mean, for me, I love these 31-28, 35-31s. I think I'd rather watch that than a Rams Chiefs 54-51. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that is a better game to watch, because that is so good to watch from a neutral fan looking in. But this kind of game for me is perfect. One that goes right down to the wire. It's why I preferred that Rams Patriots Super Bowl, which was the lowest scoring in history, to a, let's say, even Chiefs-Eagles this year, because
Yeah.
you knew the next touchdown won the game. And I felt like watching this game, that's what it was. Next touchdown wins the game, or next mistake wins the game for the other team. And for me, yeah, it ended up being Darnold's interception. But yeah, the fair play, that was one hell of a game.
Yeah, I mean, it was, again, coming through on Red Zone, the Lions were on at the same time, so this game, that naturally took more priority, so it's coming through on Red Zone. When the Bucks score a game-time touchdown with a minute to go in the game, you think, can the Seahawks do it? At no point was anyone thinking, can the Bucks do it? Right? And no one had that thought, and then they win with a walk-off field goal. Unfortunately for Sam Darnold, you don't, like, it's just the nature of the beast in those kind of areas of a game that you just have to kind of deal with. But yeah, I mean, like, games in the air, everyone likes those nice shootouts with lots of great offensive plays. Everyone, they're the most exciting they are. It's similar to, obviously, if you're watching like soccer, football, you're watching like a game that ends 5-3, 5-4. Everyone loves it because there's goals all the time, and it's end to end and all those things. It gets people on the feet. But Emeka Egbuka, man, like, wow, I hate the fact that he's doing so well as an Ohio State alumni. Like, it hurts my Michigan heart. But incredible, like, how you're out Mike Evans, you're out Chris Godwin, you've got K. Dotton, who became Baker Mayfield's go-to last year when they were having these troubles with Mike Godwin and Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. Upstack Emeka Egbuka as a rookie, just insane. Like, it's so good to see, and then yeah, you've got a really, really fun game end to end. No one feels like no one can stop the other one. It's a really, really fun game to watch. So yeah, not much more needs to be said, I think.
I agree totally. I mean, it's one of those games where sometimes less is more, and sometimes you think, well, you sometimes speak to us when you're watching games, and that for me is definitely one of them. But yeah, that is the end of our Week 5 review. So hope you all enjoyed the episode. But first of all, thank you, Fletch, for coming on.
You're very, very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Well, no problem at all. And there are many now who have already heard this many times before due to your many appearances on the show. But for those who aren't yet familiar with your work, how can they find you on social?
Yeah, so you can find me personally at Lions Guy Fletch. I'm on all the main ones: Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I really need to get better at TikTok. I've tried the last few months. I'm getting a bit better. I mostly talk about college football on there, if I'm quite honest. But you can find everything that I'm doing with the AAW network. We have 2 episodes of Hurdle the Line, a college football, fantasy football, and the 2 Patriots touchback episodes every week. So there's 6 episodes that go out on the network every single week. 2 NFL ones, a college football one, which, like, that's about 9 hours long. If you don't like college football, it's probably not going to be for you. It's that long as well. But college football is really kind of the thing that I've attached myself to and has really kind of wiggled its way into me over the last couple of years. But so you can find the AAW _ on Twitter, AAW network on everything else. And we're just doing loads of things around loads of different parts of college, of American football, primarily NFL and college football, and all the podcasts, and starting to improve my skills as a writer. I'm trying. If I want to get better, I've got to just do it, right? That's kind of the trick to everything. If you want to get better at it, just do it. So I've been trying a bit of that as well. But yeah, if for my stuff in general, Lions Guy Fletch on all the socials. For everything else, AAW Network, and then you can find everything else from there.
Well, there we are. Go give them a follow if you haven't already. And of course, I'm not, I'm a Florida Gators fan in inverted commas, but we did beat the Texans Longhorns, the Texas Longhorns this weekend, which when I saw the results, I was very surprised about, because from what I've seen results-wise this year, it hasn't been great from us. 1-3 start. There's a loss against Florida. USF, yeah, and I was like, this felt like it was one of the worst losses I've experienced as a fan. in the last 5 years I've been following the Gators results. And Texas Longhorns, I was watching a video on TikTok of someone calling them, they could be the next dynasty. And then what happens the next day? We go and beat them. So fair play. And what I did get from that game, and people talking about it on Sunday, was that maybe Arch Manning won't be a top pick in this year's draft.
No, and maybe he won't win the Heisman this year. And maybe, just maybe, it was all media hype because his last name's Manning. Which it happens. It is what it is, and he'll have time to improve, and he will get better. But I think a lot of media people have learned a lesson on how to choose the horses in which you attach yourself to when they bolt out. Using someone's last name is probably not the way to do it, and go with what they've done on the field first.
Yeah, I'm sure Shadir Sanders could be an example of that. But one thing I think everyone's forgotten is that talk about the Manning name, and of course his uncles are Eli and Peyton, but of course his dad is the one that didn't make it in the NFL. So I kind of think his genes really fall through who his dad is more than who his uncles are. So obviously talented enough to be playing starting quarterback for the Texas Longhorns, but I do think that everyone forgets that he's not Peyton's son, he's not Eli's son, he's Cooper's son, who is the one that didn't make it, the least talented Jackson of the Jackson's five. That's how I compare Cooper compared to Peyton and Eli.
You're the other Gallagher brother.
Yeah.
You're not Noel, you're not Liam, you're the other Gallagher brother. Yeah.
Well, there we are. We got on a little bit of a tangent, but that is where we will end this show for today. Thank you all for listening to our Week 5 review on Across the Pod. Stay tuned for Week 6, our Week 6 preview, which has potential to be at a certain team's training facility later on this week. But that is all to come. In the meantime, hope you enjoyed watching. Take care.